Hey Guildies, Fletch here. And you can hear me even better now. Hey Guildies, Fletch here. So today I'm going to be doing a little bit of cleanup and I'm going to be talking about something called when injected into. There's a couple different methods that you can use to accomplish open close principle. Multiple different ways, I'm sure. And one of the ways that we did last time is we created duplicate interfaces and actually could have even done a better job. Could have done this. But we essentially made duplicate interfaces, and just for the purpose of being able to inject different implementations, because whenever you have inversion of control and you're registering your services, you can register two things like this. You can register two different transients and two different implementations, but then you sort of have to get the collection and you have to get out multiple registrations and check the types, and there's different ways that you can go around it, but we decided to say this is the simplest way, and it is the simplest way. But there's other ways to do it too. I'm gonna go over when injected into as one of the options, and I'm gonna build it myself. So I hope you stick around and I hope you like it. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to get started first of all by doing a little bit of cleanup. I don't like this, and I don't like a couple other things. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go ahead and update Swashbuckle while I'm here. Okay, and I am going to install gendev.utilities.monad, no, .asp, oh, just search like that. Monad, yeah, it is monad.aspnet. Okay, install that, apply. I forgot that this only auto-completes if you've typed it here before. I was expecting it to auto-complete the package name automatically. Okay, so build, rebuild. So I'm checking the value directly here from my monad, because there's no way just to return a monad from from a controller, from one of these endpoints, and to have it understand what that means. What is a monad? When it has a value, make it a 200. When it has an exception, make it a 500. When it has no value or a none value, make it a 400. It doesn't know that by default, but now it does. So I'm going to, well, I'll demonstrate over here actually. Let's go ahead and do this. Action results. So I'm going to return this monad directly, which is the whole thing's a task, but I'm awaiting it. It is a maybe of type string, but as action result. So with this package I installed, which is gendev utilities monad ASP.NET, it gives you the as action result extension method, which will convert your maybe monad into an action result that has the appropriate HTTP status code based on whether it has some or whether it has none, and also whether or not it has an exception. So this is just part of our packages, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. There we go. And action results. All right. So that's sort of the most basic way of doing that. I'm going to do the same thing here, but I'm going to do some binds. So I'm going to say return. I'll start with the upcheck first of our SDK. This dot, and instead of a bind, I'm going to do a match. And then some will do something. And then none will return maybe none of type string. Failure. Return maybe dot Okay, so I'm going to actually say, let's do this check. This is just a Boolean. I could go through and change this to a maybe. Yeah, I don't want to connect to DB to be a maybe. I just want that to be a Boolean. So for now, I'm just going to say if. So if you can connect to the database, because one of the checks we want to do for our health check, then I'm going to say return maybe.sum success. Just like we were doing before, we were returning success. And then otherwise, I'm going to do the same thing as this. I'm just going to return failure. Okay. Not all code paths return a value. Am I crazy? Mm-hmm. Oh. No, I didn't do it. Return maybe.sum, return maybe.none. Sum, none. Yeah, that works. As action result. Oh, okay, and then this needs to be action result. That works. Why is this being weird though? Yes. Okay. If datacon.connectedDB, then I swear this is the same as it was before. But when I check back the video, maybe it won't be the same as it was before. Okay, so this is saying I'm going to now bind on the up check, and if there is some, then uh, then first of all check the database also, and then if both of those end up passing, then return success. Otherwise, if this one fails, return failure, and if in the beginning the bind had none, return failure. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so I've cleaned that up a little bit. Now I'm not getting that annoying warning that was there. And this one is cleaned up. And this one is cleaned up. And I've updated my a swashbuckle, and I've installed my ASP.NET, monad helper. Okay. All right, so that is the cleanup portion. Now I'm going to program. Okay, so when injected into, here we're essentially saying when when a service asks for the original domain service, when some other service, which is going to be the controller, asks for iDomain service, return this domain service. When some controller asks for iDomain service 2, return them domain service version 2. But instead, I want to say, I just want to add a transient for this iDomain service. But if it's being injected into domain stuff controller, then give it this. But if it's being injected into domain stuff controller v2, then give it this one. So that is my requirement that I want to be able to fulfill. And there's a few different ways to do it, but I'm going to do it like this. Service.add transient provider. Yeah. For iDomain service dot when injected into domain stuff controller Then, yeah, I think this sounds good. No. Then do this. I think that sounds good. But when injected into domain stuff controller v2, then do the same thing, but with the v2 one. Yeah. Yeah, I think that looks good. So I'm figuring out what I want my contract to be, how I'm expecting this to work. I can't in here, for example, I can't say what am I being injected into, and like make a decision inside of here. There is actually something you can do inside of here, which I plan to go over in a future video. It's actually, I think, a sort of a cleaner way than when injected into. But I think when injected into is interesting enough that I can go over it. So I'm going to go over that right now. So I can't do that here. And also, let's go ahead and just go back on all this. I can't use the add transient like this. And then when injected into, etc. Because at this point, it's already something that works. And so when this is called, I can't just say, okay, well, this is called, but I don't want it to actually register anything yet. I want to just say, okay, this is what I'm trying to work toward, but I'll decide what to register in these future method extensions. You can't do that because this has already finished a registration at this point. If I extend off of this, that's great, but that extension is just going to be using an iService collection. So it's already an iService collection. It's just another iService collection. I might as well just make another line called do more stuff here. There. Yeah. My fingers just type whatever they want. Okay, so I can't do that because when this happens, it's going to automatically search, and it's going to use reflection. It's going to find different services that implement this, and currently there's only one, and it's just going to say this is what you get. So I can't do that. So I need to make one called add transient provider, which will simply keep track of the fact that, okay, I need to track that we're going to work with iDomain service. That's the thing that we're trying to register for. But when it's injected into this, give it this. When it's injected into this, give it this. So I can't do that. Okay, add transient provider. So in order to do this, like I said, I need to track that this is our goal. So what I'm going to do is add transient provider will create a temporary class. So instead of this, like add transient, returning another iService collection, returning the current iService collection, I'm going to have it return a temporary class that can be built upon. And then I can, from that temporary class, I'll have an extension called WhenInjectedInto that can then be, you can build upon it. When it's injected into this, do this. So that class will be called namespace guild test. Things work better when you're in a namespace. And this is just temporary, but I need to do this anyway. Public class transient when injected into. Yeah, sure, why not? Okay, I also, okay, let's start with this. Okay, that's what it's going to return. This is going to return that class, but I need to make an extension off of iService collection called this. I don't think I know how to do that automatically with automatic code. So public static transient or when injected into extensions. Public static class. Okay, and then static transient we add transient provider. This iService collection. Okay. Okay, it's not generic at the moment. Ta-da. Okay, so I've created the extension method that needs to return a transient we, and the transient we needs to have a method called WhenInjectedInto. This is add transient calls this the T service, I think. T service, okay. So I'm going to use T service for the type that we're trying to resolve to. So transient we will be this kind of thing, generic of type T service. And also, I'm pretty sure I need to do this. It requires to be a class. Yeah, where T service is class. So let's do that. All right. And then I will say public, since when injected into needs to be chainable, it needs to keep returning that same transient we service. So it needs to return that when injected into. Okay. Oh, that's weird. So when injected into, and this is not going to be T service. This is going to be I service or just I input service. Resolving service. R maybe. Where R class, okay. Okay. And this needs to accept, just like the add transient does, it needs to accept a registration that has access to get required service. That is not the service provider, but the service provider. Okay, not the service collection, but the service provider. Okay, so this needs to accept a func, an anonymous function that where I will give you an iService provider, and then you will give me back an R. No, I want it to be the same as this. You will give me back a T service. What does it's like factory or something, I think. Transient is called implementation factory. Okay. I will also call it the implementation factory. Cool. All right, so that's going to be our contract. Add transient provider. When injected into this, give me back this. When injected into this, give me back this. Yeah. All done. Now that's just the contract. Now I need to actually implement this. So this extension method should say return new I have a feeling I'm missing something. Oh, I probably, yeah, I'm going to need to pass along this service collection so it can be used. There we go. Okay, so I'm now returning one of these. And this, when injected into, I'm not sure what the implementation is for this yet. And just so it's clear, I have not yet done any business logic or conditional transformations. There's no like, if the amount of money is between this much and this much, then divide by this. There's no business logic going on here. This is pure scaffolding or pure platform code with no conditional transformations at the moment. That's why I'm not writing a test. I'm sort of coming up with a contract here. I'm not writing business logic at the moment. Okay, so the contract says that. So the way this is going to work, let's approach this from the other direction now. This is from the front direction of, this is the contract of how we're going to be defining these things. But how we're going to be using these things is, instead of saying domain service directly in here, we're going to say something like when injected into factory. I don't think I need to put we factory of type domain service. So that's what this is going to say is, and I'll call it we factory here. What we're going to say is, when we get this here, instead of directly saying domain service, we're saying we're going to get a factory, and we're going to say we factory dot get me my service for my type, and I'll give it the type like this. So the we factory is going to end up doing sort of like we said before, where it's going to be registering both of these. It's going to be registering two instances of iDomain service with two different implementations, but it'll keep track of, if their type is this, give them this one. If their type is this, give them this one. So here, when I say whatever that factory is that's tracking that, give me my service, this is my type. So I'm here, give me my service, this is my type. It should give you back the correct one. That's what we're going to end up doing. So I need to make this class here. And I will continue to use just the program file, but I'll move these. I'll move these eventually. Public class, we of type. Okay, this isn't the type that we're trying to resolve to, which is T service. And it's not the type that's going to be resolved, which is the domain service, or R service. This is the dependent service. And it's a controller in this case, but it could really be any service. So I'm going to say D service. Okay. And this will have a method called myService, public. Oh, no. Okay, yeah, this is the T service. This is the type that I'm going here. Public R service. No. T service, my service, and the type that we tell it. Okay, so this is the type that we tell it, and it's going to be D service. D service. Okay. Does that resolve this? Domain stuff control. Yeah, it does. Okay. All right. So when this transient we is created via calling add transient provider, so it's created one time here and then it's used and it can be passed along, used and used and used. But when it's created here, let's create our we service here. Yeah. Hmm. Okay, so what we're really going to do, what's really going to happen in the end is when we are calling these, so far we haven't talked about okay, but what actually gets registered in the service provider. Obviously, these need to get registered, but those are registered as a side note. What we really need to think about registering right now is this, because the domain service controller depends on the WhenInjectedInto factory. So we need to register that WhenInjectedInto factory. And we'll do that down here. We will say service.addTransient. Hmm? Yeah. So if anything ever asks for the WhenInjectedInto factory of this exact type, we will return to them this one. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so now every time we add when injected into this, give me this, when injected into this, give me this, we need to store that. Huh. So let's say private read-only dictionary when injected into this, give me this. I like this method better. I think that's fine. All right, so we're gonna say registrations.add the type. We have the T service. Okay, so the R service, type of R service. So when injected into this, give me, well, I guess give me the implementation factory. So let's put this up there. Okay. Mm. And like I said, when injected into should be chainable. Hey, MC. MC. I don't know who MC is. Hey, MC. So I'm writing this library for when injected into it's or this very small bit of code. It should be fairly simple. So add transient provider for this when injected into domain stuff controller, give me this domain service. When injected into the v2 controller, give me this other domain service, and this should be chainable. So that's why I'm returning this every time so that I can keep calling when injected into on the same object over and over. Okay. I've added those registrations. Now, let me move some stuff so I can see chat better in case someone asks me a question. Yeah. Doing it live. Okay. Okay, so we service is a new we service. I'm going to need I don't know how to do that exactly. So my service, whenever it says get my service, so I'm going to need to duplicate how this works right here. I'm going to have to duplicate inside here. We have the service provider. So I'm going to need the service provider because what this is going to do is say return some sort of service provider stuff. I definitely need the service provider. So I'm going to say private read-only iService provider service provider. And how that gets injected, of course, is going to be inside the. Well, let me just make detour. Usually it has a shortcut option for that. There we go. Okay, so service provider. Yeah, I'm not using this here. So I think what I do is do it here, and that way I can give it the service provider. So now we're saying whenever something like the domain stuff controller asks for this factory, the WhenInjectedInto factory, it will pull it from this transient, which will then generate the WhenInjectedInto factory, and I'll be able to pass along that service provider. Okay, and then when it calls my service, it will return service provider dot get required service. Oh yeah, so I've got my function that requires a service provider. Oh, I'm going to need access to that too. So I'm going to say I also need a way to get to this. I'm going to pass along this transient service as well so that I can get to its registrations here. Yeah. Is that red? Oh, it must be a reference type. Okay. Where the service is class. Where it's classy. All right, so let's go ahead and pull that up to there. Okay. So I don't want to make this public. Let's for a moment just make it public, and so I can I'm not going to keep it public. Let's just keep it public first, make it public so I can test something. Dot registrations. So if I have the type of this dot no var factory equals, what's it called? Factory implementation factory. Okay, and then return. Oh yeah, implementation factory is the thing that needs the iService provider. So now we've got that. There we go. Okay, but okay. So first of all, let's make that's not public. That's the general idea right there. But let's make that not public. Let's say. Could you do a func delegate, register that as your we component, and provide the key to get the concrete service you want? I think that's what I'm doing. Let me finish this thought right here, and then I'm going to jump over and see if that's what you're talking about. Get registrations. registrations. Yeah. Oh, protected's not going to be good. It's fine if this is public. Okay, so do a function delegate, register that as your we component. I think you're talking about up here. Let's print things. So back in my composition root, when injected into, and I have a function delegate that says, when injected into this, this the same as the add transient, has the function delegate that it requires I service provider, and it says, okay, for this, when we want to resolve one of these, give me one of these, and I'm saying the same thing here. When I want to resolve one of these, I'm using this function delegate. When injected into this, give me this. And the key I think you're talking about, I think this is essentially the key. So I'm saying use this as the key. If this is the key, then give me this. And then over in my controllers, over in this controller right here, I'm saying use that factory. I'm passing in itself as the key, and then it should give you the right thing. So I think that's the same thing that you're saying. And I think what I've done is finish, but I'm open to you clarifying if there's a simpler way to do this also. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so I think this is right. I'm just worried that if I like it's you can see that it still worked like this. Let's do this. No errors. So I'm worried that if they forget to register a when injected into, it won't work. So I'm going to say implementation factory. I want to check first if it has stuff in it. So var registrations equals this. If registrations dot contains key. No, I don't like contains key. Okay, so if registrations dot try to get value, there it is. If try to get value, oh, it auto completed a lot more than I expected for that. So if try get value, then do this with that service. That's not the service. That's an implementation factory. Otherwise throw an exception. I don't like. I'd rather do this reversed. So throw new exception of some kind, and then this is a gate instead. So that would be an early return. If it's false, then do that. Then I'm not doing any nesting with my logic. And I'm going to say throw an exception. You didn't register a type of yes. $sign. Argument null exception. Yeah, that's good. Argument null exception. Argument null or an invalid operation exception, something like that. But I like your idea of argument null exception. So you didn't register a this for type of T service. Oh, I gotta say .name on these. I think. Okay, so let's try that and see what we get here. It's actually, well, we'll see if anything explodes. Nothing exploded. minimize that. And I'll hit send on get something. Am I not in get something? There's get something. Oh, well, that's weird. Oh, duh. I'm hitting my production one over here. Here we go. This is the swagger that opened whenever I started this instance. So get something, try it out, execute. Okay. Okay, no connection made. And this is an exception because I actually have two APIs that need to be running in order to test this. So this is a success as far as I'm concerned because I'm gonna test it again here in a second. Oh, hey Matt, hey Matt. So I'm glad that you jumped on here. I'm really excited about that. So I'm going to skip over that this is an error right now, and I'm going to, well, first of all, let's test the number 2 here. Did I ever finish number 2? I never, no, I did switch number 2. Anyway, I'm going to promote this to my staging development environment so that both instances are running, both APIs are running, and we can get a better test on that. So, first implementation of when injected into commit. All right. And that should be my CI/CD pipeline to my own local IIS service should have worked for that, which means that now this will show us something at least. There it is. Success. Got something from DB, got something from DB2. And version 2, I think I caused an error with version 2 previously, probably outside of the stream. Okay, so let's do it again here locally and double check, walk through some of the stuff that we did. I've got program. Plus, I also want to put these classes inside of their own files. So let's do that first. Move that. Bam. Move that. Bam. Move that. All right. Okay, so I had a fun time. This is just for fun, just so we're clear. This is just some of the things that I like to do for fun. Add transient provider for this. When injected into this object, give me this. When injected into this object, give me this. So add transient provider is just a basic extension that gives me a holder class. And then I've got when injected into, it just registers that when it's injected into this type, use the implementation factory that we define here. And then on the dependent side, I have, we take a dependency on the class that, on a class that keeps track of that stuff. So this class is able to then provide my service and say registrations equals, get those registrations. If you didn't register something, then throw the exception. Otherwise, return that implementation factory based on your type. And this one doesn't have that. Let's do that. That could be why there was the error. Very nice. That's why we walk through things. Oh, I can get rid of domain service 2 now. Delete that, which means that this can be fixed to that. Lots of good cleanup going on here. All right. And this version 2 doesn't depend on the second API, so I'm just going to run it locally or run it through Visual Studio, debug through Visual Studio. And where did it go? Is this it? Okay, v2, try it out, execute, version 2. It just returns version 2. That's just all it does. Okay, so that works. This one should still give me exception because through Visual Studio, I'm not running my second instance of Visual Studio with that other API. So this gives me no connection can be made. That's perfect. And then clean up. There it goes. And final test. Well, version 2 final test. It is version 2, and then get something. There it goes. Health check. Success. Marco Polo. Gives me Polo. All right. So that is one way, one manual way that I did here to accomplish the open close principle when we're talking about something from my prior videos. Yeah. Okay, Matt, you bring up AutoFac. I love some of these cool things that Ninject, AutoFac, Castle Windsor, and these other IOC containers do. I try to stay away from IOC containers a lot of the time, but when they're used, because they're used pretty much everywhere, and I'll also say when I try to say I stay away from them. This is essentially an IOC container, add transient. This is just the ASP.NET built-in IOC container. I love. It's not even ASP.NET. It's you can use it outside of ASP.NET as well. So I stay away from them, or when they're used, I make sure people know. And I said this in another video, so I'm glad that you're here with Matt. If you do use an IOC container, do it with some manual instantiation of your classes. Don't allow it to. This is just my personal opinion. Don't allow it to auto. I agree. If it's built in, it's good. The more third-party libraries used, then the more you try. Yeah, third-party libraries. So I don't like. I was saying something like this. I don't like this because it's going to use reflection to find the right class, which is great. But also, if I were to at some point change this around and everything seems to work, then over here, if this were just like this, and this is, I'm just airing off some things that I have problems with AutoFac and Inject, and even this in general, IOC containers in general. Add transient, data service, you're not going to catch it here. You will catch it, and if you're working out of trunk or do even if you're doing pair programming and both of you miss it and you're working out of trunk and you push this, if you're doing TDD and you have all your tests and your CI/CD, it'll probably catch a problem. But this is just another problem that you're going to find. It's a bug you're going to find in production or while it's running instead of at build time, at runtime instead of at build time. So that's why I try to stay. That's one of the reasons why I stay away from a lot of IOC containers, or I'm very cautious with IOC containers, is because of that. And so I say be as explicit as possible. Put that back there. Put it there. All right. Well, I'm really hyped up right now. I did have a lot of caffeine right before this for some reason, so I might be talking a little bit fast, but this was just a really fun video I wanted to make because at the end of my last video, I didn't do this. Build failures through automation is good. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thanks for coming, Matt. We should talk again at some point outside of this. And I hope you like this. I hope you subscribe. And I hope everyone likes and subscribes to this video. Leave a comment if you're watching this in the future. Tell me what you think about WhenInjectedInto. I'm not saying that I use WhenInjectedInto. Like I said in the beginning of this video, there's other ways to do this sort of thing. We already had a way of doing this sort of thing. This is just a fun video to make, to create a WhenInjectedInto extension method just for fun. So talk to you guys later.